No shortage of news made there. Some notable remarks from beginning to end. He said he's not happy. That was the main theme. Not happy with NATO because of Greenland, not happy because of Europe's lack of help with Iran. And he also mentioned that he wants to cut off all trade with Spain. One of the most notable comments that the president made, though, came at the end when he was asked if the ceasefire with Iran is over. And he said, "I think it's over. They are scum. As far as I'm concerned, it is dead." So with that, let's bring in national security and military analyst and international relations expert, Rebecca Grant. Dr. Grant, thank you so much for joining us. What is your reaction to all that you just heard from President Trump?
Well, I think you're right, Carly. That big news there is the ceasefire is over. We'll see. He did say that the negotiators are free to talk. But when you combine that with the fact that CENTCOM just hit 80 targets in Iran and the negotiations seem to be at a complete deadlock, it's clear that Trump is moving this to a new phase. He's going to, again, use military pressure, more strikes if needed, in order to put Iran back in the box. They cannot continue these attacks on the shipping lane there through the Strait of Hormuz. And I think he is entering a new phase. Hey, look out. He may be ready to take Karj Island. This is why our forces remain in U.S. CENTCOM. And then, of course, frustrated that NATO has not been more grateful or supportive of his denuclearization of Iran.
When you use phrases like "they're sick," "there's something wrong with them," "they're dirty players," "bunch of scum," "evil people," "they're crazy," I have to turn the page because there's even more. "Just a waste of time dealing with them," "liars," "cheats," "sick people." That does not sound like someone who is ready to continue negotiations. He sounds like he's done. And to your point, Carly, how soon could we expect a resumption of military activity beyond what we saw last night, which was fairly limited?
Well, I believe Admiral Cooper, our commander in Central Command, is ready anytime. Remember, none of the forces, 50,000 U.S. service members there, came back. You've still got 2 aircraft carriers, the U.S. Tripoli, all the U.S. land-based air, Army elements. They were able to do air assault. They can do anything that they need to. And I think all the words he had for Iran, there's no one in the world who's going to disagree with that. He's just speaking the truth. Normally, it's only behind closed doors. President Trump tells us exactly what he's dealing with moment to moment. And his frustration with Iran has absolutely peaked.
It's also interesting because later on in the day, Dr. Grant, the president is going to be meeting with the Syrian leader. Obviously, Bashar al-Assad, the former leader, was a great ally of Iran. This new one who ousted him is quite the opposite of that. So what do you think the president will want to get out of that meeting with the Syrian president? And could there actually be, like Todd said, a resumption of military action coming in the next couple days here?
Well, to Syria, I think President Trump is quite pleased with the gamble that he and other Arab states have made on the new Syrian leader, al-Shara, who had that incredible background once in a U.S. military prison in Iraq, now the strong leader who's been able to pull Syria together. He's proven that he can lead that country. And, of course, the process here is additional sanctions relief and resumption of trade and relations to support him in keeping it together. Back to your question about military activity, you know, those targets are always pre-briefed and ready to go. I think Admiral Cooper will brief back the results of the strikes, the force posture of Iran, you know, whether there's small boats moving around, what their forces are doing, and then decide from there whether to pause again and continue this so-called ceasefire or to go ahead with additional strikes. But clearly Trump is thinking in that direction. And hey, this time we better see a little more support verbally and maybe even with military forces from some NATO partners. Wouldn't that be nice?
Dr. Ed, it is clear that Iran is the main breaking news to come out of this, but definitely lesser, but still important nonetheless. Carly mentioned it earlier. Spain and Greenland. He really called out Spain, saying they are a wasted cause, a terrible partner, and then presumably looked to Scott Bessent, who we saw at the end of the press conference there. We didn't know it at the time, but clearly going to Scott Bessent saying he wants wants to cut off all trade with Spain, basically saying, please do that, Scott. And then when it comes to Greenland, saying Greenland is a big problem for us, he says Denmark doesn't really need it. We do. Do you see anything tangible coming out of those points in the press conference as this NATO summit continues? Talking Spain, talking Greenland.
Well, I think Spain better be putting in a call to President Trump because he is very frustrated. They don't contribute as much. But remember, we do have a very important naval base there that we use for those destroyers that provide ballistic missile support through the Mediterranean and across the Middle East, support against Iran. So he's really telling Spain to, hey, get in line. And as Mark Rutte pointed out, Spain is thinking about increasing their contributions. But, yep, Spain's in the doghouse this morning. As for Greenland, it's the same message. Greenland, because of our Space Force base there, is very important to global security, to America, to Golden Dome, and he wants to make sure that those talks continue in the direction he wants to go. And frankly, he wants to be able to have full access to Greenland and to continue the mining of strategic minerals. But that is a national security issue for the U.S., and he's not backing off on the importance of Greenland.
Yesterday, the president made some major news by saying that he would be lifting sanctions on Turkey that could pave the way for Turkey to obtain F-35 fighter jets, despite them being in possession of a Russian air defense system. And that's cause for concern because there is worry that Russia could receive information on our most advanced fighter jet through Turkey if they are in possession of those F-35s. Bipartisan concern on this from both Republicans and Democrats. Are you worried about this as well if this does go through?
You know, I'd actually like to see Turkey back in the F-35 program. They were an original international partner, and we were going to even do some F-35 production in Turkey. The concerns about the S-400, you know, they've never fully activated that system, and they're building their own steel dome without that Russian system. And, you know, now F-35s have flown all over Europe, all over the Middle East, and I think the concerns about gleaning information on their radar signature or plugging some device in that would corrupt NATO's tactical data links, I think that can all be managed. And I'd really I'd like to see Turkey back in the F-35 program. They are an important southern bulwark for NATO. Just look at the map. We need that wall of air power, and F-35s for Turkey, I think it would be a good thing.
All right, day 2 and final day of the NATO summit. The president opening up with a couple of newsworthy items, and there's going to be a lot more to come with that press conference, and he's going to be having 2 sit-down meetings as well with the Syrian president and President Vladimir Zelensky as well. Dr. Grant, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We appreciate it.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.